Hi everyone, how are you? Today's program is really interesting, especially for aspiring writers. We'll be getting lessons from none other than Anuradha Kumar, the famous writer, and taking tips from her as to how to become a good writer. Come, let us talk to her. My first question is, what do you find very challenging as a writer?
Firstly, a fear. You feel afraid that you don't have the confidence. In the beginning, I thought, I can write about, small stories, not big ones. And yeah, that's essentially a writer has a beginning writer. I'm talking about my own experience. Begins with a lot of fear and diffidence. First of all, I can't do it, and then I won't have the time. Both are essentially true because all of us lead such busy lives, running about here and there. But the first thing to do is overcome the fear. There's nothing you can write. I mean, everybody has a story to tell, or more than one story to tell, and it's just to get it all down first. I mean, no matter how much time you have or don't have, if you just write 500 words a day and not worry about becoming a perfectionist and seeing that it's all correct and all that. The first thing is to just get it all down on your computer or paper, however you work. So those are the first steps one has to, at least I try to do it, just write it all down, and then comes the process of revision and rewriting, which is much longer than the actual writing process. So, yeah.
And how many words do you target a day in your schedule, like any fixed words?
I try to do 1,000 words a day. There's some very bad days when when actually I get distracted by social media and all that, and I try to follow the news essentially last few days with what's happening in Delhi. I try to do 1,000 words, and I try to read every day. That's not always possible, but I try to. I definitely try to read every day and write a bit every day.
Any fixed pages which you read, like 30 or 20 or any fixed number, or just in general?
Yeah, usually when I have the time just before sleeping or early in the morning, if I'm reading a good book, I just stick with it and
No fixed pages.
No, usually it's half an hour here and there, or an hour or so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And ma'am, you've written historical fiction, which involves a lot of research. So, putting that into a fiction, historical facts into fiction, is that very difficult?
Natalia, I read history at Delhi University. I did 5 years of history.
Okay.
I love history. It's my favorite subject. And most of my reading has been on history. Even now, I continue to write around history. So fictionalizing it, it took some learning. I had to work on it. The first book, Chandragupta, took me at least 5 years to write. And I revised. I made at least 8-9 drafts of it. Because I had to write about the king's dilemma and also make it action-packed, because he did fight a lot of battles and he came across a lot of challenges. So it took a careful balancing act between the history that I had read and to make him into a character that present day people could relate to, because the dilemmas and challenges he faced were actually quite universal. How to live a life without being too cruel, and a king was expected to be cruel and hard in those times, but how to live that, how to do one's dharma, balancing all these things. So that was quite a learning experience.
And ma'am, how challenging was getting a book published as a first comer in the publishing world? Is it very challenging?
Actually, it is. That's a story in itself. The thing is not to give up, just be very pig-headed and stubborn and persistent. So Letters for Paul was my first novel, and I got a lot of rejections. And but the thing is, when I first began writing it about 18 years ago, seems like ancient history now, 2002, I had the gumption and audacity to actually write to writers like Kiran Nagarkar and Shama Fateh Ali and Pankaj Mishra. And I guess those were early days and people didn't mind being bothered on email so much. And I asked them if they would be kind enough to look over some of my chapters and all that. So that was a learning and they were very encouraging. They could have said I don't have the time and stuff like that, but they did. So I'm grateful to them for that. So their feedback kind of encouraged me, and I sort of didn't want to give up, even though I think it was rejected by almost everyone. Almost all the big publishers in Delhi, Penguin, HarperCollins, everyone rejected it. And there's this publisher in Ahmedabad who does all these nice art books and history books, Mappin, who published it. But after that, the editor who had rejected me, she saw the reviews and she encouraged me to write more, and she was the one who got me to write for children's books, and so it went on from there. So it's okay. So what I'm saying is that even those who reject you, you'll find something helpful about their rejection and criticism. So never to be totally defeated by criticism. You never know why people are rejecting you. They have their own reasons, but to just keep going on in spite of that and learning from that rejection.
One last question I have. When you got your books edited initially, then after your drafts, you got in an external editor before submitting it to the publishers, or the publishers themselves edited it for you?
Yeah. In the beginning, no, not with my children's fiction. I worked with very good editors at Penguin and at Hachette. But for coming back to the city, I did it as part of my MFA writing program, my 2 years of MFA. So I had my teachers and my classmates who were looking at the stories, at the chapters, and giving me feedback. So that helped. And after I graduated, I did get this book looked over by an editor, and that always helps. And as things are becoming more competitive and more people are writing, and there's the internet and there's so many avenues. So for your book to stand out, you do need to get as much help as possible. And even big writers here, I know, have editors helping them. So it's not an isolated process. So to write a book almost, I think, takes a small village.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So I was in conversation with Anuradha Kumar, the famous and the versatile writer who has written historic fiction for children. She's a complete writer, and I have learned a lot of things from her. So if you have any questions for her, perhaps you could email me on my email address given below. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Tata. Bye-bye. And do tune in my next show, which would be soon. But before that, you need to subscribe, and don't forget to subscribe. That's very important. Tata, bye bye, take care.